So yeah, sitting back. Oh, sorry, rather sitting up and doing the tapping. The tapping is done just to sort of as a first stage of really bringing your attention into your body. At the same time, just getting the blood circulating through key muscles a little bit and into the brain. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. The other side. Up your chest. Belly. Resting back, and I use the term flopping back. It's a bit more structured than that. There is a definite structure there. Yeah, you can have your feet like this. Like this may give you a little bit more support, but you know, just as I say, don't force the movement. But with the toes up, you do get a stronger sense of dropping back, I think. But also, you know, you've still got the parallel lines there. It's not just a random flop in, tuck your legs under, whatever. There is a definite structure there. And so it's worth being aware of, you know, the line from shoulder to hip, down to your feet. Feeling yourself settle into the chair. Subsequent sort of release of tightness and stiffness wherever you happen to find it, but chest and shoulders is very common. It's one of the reasons this can be quite a good posture for just playing around with the breath a bit, becoming a little bit aware of your breathing, the rhythm of your breath, and the fullness of your breath. And as I've been pointing out the last couple of weeks to various classes, that rhythm in the breath, it involves that sort of slowing down, a little punctuation mark between the in-breath and the out-breath, and the out-breath and the in-breath. It's not a panting breath, gasping for breath. There's just a little bit of space there. And that space, that stillness, very much a feature of the whole approach to the art. You find it in the physical movements, but it's really a kind of thing that exists in the mind, that we're not going to let ourselves be rushed into anything, even if we're moving more quickly, which we don't really do a great deal of in these classes, but not in a hurry to move on from one stage until you get a sense of completeness in that particular stage. Bringing your feet in some ways, I think that that punctuation point is easier to grasp when we're standing, because when we're standing, we actively sink down, our hips are physically dropping down more. And then there's this little kind of pause in movement when we feel the push up. In the chair, our hips aren't really going to go up and down particularly. So it's a little bit more difficult to identify. And yet another example of the subtlety, I think, of the chair-based exercises. Then our usual routine, starting with head and neck, turning gently, with the feeling that the muscles, the big muscles in your neck and your upper back and shoulders, it's being very gently massaged. So the movement itself creates an effect that encourages more movement. And then hands on the shoulders. Again, that nice massaging effect in chest, upper back. Going forwards. Paying attention to the range of the movement, how far you're moving, not moving too far. So avoiding that feeling of a tightening, of gripping in your muscles. Yeah, hands down by your sides and rotating. And then winding around. And back the other way. Rest your hands down. Now, easing forwards and pushing back. As you come back, give a moment to settle before you go forwards again. Same in the front position, perhaps a little bit less obvious. But what you may find is in this position, you've automatically kind of tightened up in the shoulders. So you can get to here and just let that straining drop. It's almost like your rib cage were hanging down, but still keeping that sort of firmer quality in your back and then down. So it's almost like if I were going to do this, it's like I'm trying to do this, trying to push my head up. I just let go of that and then come back. Right there, right there. And then the same thing when I go back, I'm trying to do that. So I just let myself drop down a little bit. Feeling the transition from full to empty in your feet and your hips. Full being when there's more weight in that area, empty being the opposite. So the movement is a very fluid, water-like movement from one to the other. And then turn just a little bit. Distinguishing now between full and empty in each leg. The leg that you're going to is going to fill up. The other leg still got some weight in it, but not as much, not as obvious. And in the other direction. And around, feeling your weight now moving around the edge of the square. So we have a square with our feet and our hips at the four corners. And the weight seems to be just moving around there. Pelvis tilting as we do. So obviously you don't want to go too far. It's fine with your weight here, but if your weight's out there somewhere, you're going to go falling out the chair or straining to stay in it. Go back the other way. And come back to the center. Hands down to your sides. Turn your hand palm forwards. Fisherman cast from the head. Again, from the side, my arm remains hanging, hanging from my shoulder, so straight down from the shoulder. As my shoulders move forwards, my hand has moved forwards, of course. But it's not this. So when we come forward, we change to fisherman cast the net. You imagine the hands hanging in water so that as you go back, they're delayed slightly and then they swing through. Same thing going forwards. And as you settle down, you make that movement settling into your feet. Your arms will just swing forwards a bit. This is one of the few movements in which, for a little while at least, our arms are a little bit behind the shoulders, and even to an extent behind the hips, although barely that. As I say, most movements we don't do that, but here we do. And in order to bring the arm through without straining, we use the elasticity here where our shoulder meets our chest. If you put a finger there while you're doing this, you'll feel at this stage it's sort of extended outward and then it begins to contract in. And that helps to bring the arm through, especially when it's done on both sides. And then imagine the ball in front of you, drawing over, rolling the ball in, letting your hands drop down. Pulling on your arms, not straining to lift them. Feeling that very subtle expansion up through belly, solar plexus, and into your ribs. Almost like a wave coming up, and it's almost like the wave lifts your arms for you. One more time. Change in as you get to the top of the movement by turning your hands palm in, drawing your elbows apart. Pigeon spreads its wings. Now, push and wave, keeping your hands down, elbows still go out. The part of what contributes to the push forwards is the elbows going out and then being drawn back in. And that again engages that elasticity here where your arm meets the chest. And because it's being done on both sides, it's almost like if I exaggerate, it's like I'm doing this and I've got this big stretch there, and then it also squeezes in to push forward. It's more subtle than that, but that complements the forwards and backwards movement that we make. One more time. And then as you come back this time, keep the forearms straight and bring your elbows back towards your ribs. Roll your fingers into a loose fist. Push straight out. So the elbows don't come out this time. And here you can see the elbows still in front of my hip. It doesn't go back there. So it's actually quite a small movement. It's as though the depth of the movement coming back has been absorbed into that spiraling movement. So your hand gets pushed out, straight out from the shoulder. Your arm extends a little bit. And the arm rotates. And then turning out, opening the fist as you do this. So from here, turn out, like your fingers are just probing their way backwards. Again, that opening and closing in chest and upper back. This time, when you get back to the rear position, turn your hands palm down, polishing the table. Try and remember that feeling of your hips dropping back or being pulled back into the chair. So it's important when we extend out that we don't get to here and kind of lock up. That was why I was talking to you about dropping down. Because if I do that, if I get to about here and I'm really stiff, actually coming back isn't that easy. We need to get a feeling of the body sort of gently sort of contracting back into the hips. One more time. Your hands drop down. Now the push is upwards through your spine. Again, like the wave coming up, expanding. and one more time. Change into the wild goose. One more time. Easy forwards. Heart in the clouds. Let your hands drop down. Now, dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Both hands together. One more round. Extend one foot. Scoop in the sea, looking at the sky. Try and have your hands in such a position. Imagine if you were shoveling up soil or snow or something like that. Your arm should reflect that to an extent. You can see that, not like that or like that. Just think of that line from elbow to wrist, to the tips of your fingers. Again, here there's a slight movement behind. So when we do get to those limits of the posture, so when we could do it like this incidentally, but if you are going that little bit further, that's no problem. But we have to be extra careful. Up to here, it's fine. soon as we get there, it's like, yeah, I'm getting close to that point of gripping, of tightening. Changing this time to grasping the tiger's ears. Changing sides. So first of all, scooping the sea, looking at the sky. Grasping the tiger's ears. One more. Good. Bringing your feet parallel and just moving your weight into one leg and then back to a more central position, and then turn the opposite way towards the other leg, moving into that. Hands in front of you. So you're carrying a tray of drinks or a ball in each hand. I'm going to go into the very dynamic, hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. So now, as you go into your right foot, pushing your left hand out and raising up a little, and then turning, coming down on the other side. It's a very fluid movement, displaying that sort of sense of strength in the movement, but also the precision, the clarity. If you're going to hit a ball, you only really have one option on getting it right. It's not very forgiving. So you imagine the ball coming down to meet the hand as it rises, keeping the hand at the correct angle, and so on and so forth. Again, that straight line, elbow to tips of your fingers. So now, bring the hands out, a little bit wider, angling out from your shoulders, cow gazes at the moon. Make sure this hip is very well centered into the chair. So don't do something like this, get the hair and then reach out like that. I can feel it straining my back. It's an extension of my back from my hips. One more to each side. And then just let your hands come to rest. Sit for a few moments in this position, just reminding yourself of how it feels, the qualities that you're looking to reproduce when we get to the standing movements. Okay, now just rubbing your hands together again. Tapping very lightly over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. The other side. Up. Light on your belly. A bit stronger again on your legs, hands fisted, or you can use your hands cupped up for the fisted hands. Paying attention to the big muscles of your legs and the calves and thighs. Good. Push down through your toes, push your knees up. And then turn around in a circle so you get the rotation in your hips. And then go in the other direction. Good. Okay. Then standing. I'm going to move my chair out of the way so I can come forwards and backwards a bit more easily. But remember, the chair or the wall or the table can be a very useful aid in trying to work out particular movements. So you know, make use of it as is appropriate. First of all, standing in posture. And just going back to the question about the ankles when we're in the reclining position. There's another thing I'll point out later. But this movement, this flexing and extension of the ankle can be quite difficult. For obvious reasons, our ankles can take a bit of a battering. So it's worth thinking about what's actually going on there, because as I do this, then there's a slight change in not a massive change, but there is a change in the angle of the ankle. And there's another element there that I'm also going to point out to you later. If the ankles stiffen up, it's like if any of the big joints of the body stiffen up, then it can interrupt the flow of the movement. Joints like ankles, knees, hips, wrists, elbows, shoulders are sometimes referred to as energy gates. So like a gate, a passageway, or a doorway or something like that, or maybe even a roundabout in a road system. If they get jammed up, then the traffic piles up. The people trying to get out of a gate and the gate won't open. You end up with a queue of people there. So this is why we do do work with the joints of the body. Probably ignored the ankles a little bit to be honest, but we will come back to that. So let your hips drop back and then pushing up and sinking. Keep going, I'm just getting some water. Change to the wild goose. And then part in the clouds. One more time. Check out. Hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. So moving from side to side to about 60% of your weight. So this movement, if you go too far, this is what happens, or you're leaning out, so it's a very small movement. You're trying to keep that center line of your body straight up. So I'm going to demonstrate with the pole. Here you can see as I move across, I'm not doing that or trying not to do that anyway, that or doing that. Moving with, then if you look at where the pole is going to, you'll see, let's get it right. It's going to just, it's a little bit further forward than it should be, obviously, because it should be going through my body. But you see where it ends up. It ends up just inside the foot. Just inside the foot. It should be back just behind the ball of the foot as well. But as I said, that's not going to happen. But it's not going to get all the way across yet. What happens is, from here, I go across, I raise my heel. So again, that's the ankle. And when I raise my heel, I move across just a little bit more. Because the heel here, the heel down is stopping me moving. I push my knee forward, let the heel come up, and that moves me across just slightly. And then what I'm going to do when I get to here is I'm going to turn. And this, if it were inside my body, would be like the axle of a wheel. I turn around that. And then I go back and I do the same thing. I move across, I position the center line there because the heel is up, and then I move across. So make sure of the position to begin with, and this is not something I would suggest that we carry it too far, but we could divide it into three. One, you move your weight. Two, you raise your heel and the weight moves a little bit more. And then three, you turn. And you put the heel down, and one, you move your weight, 2, push the knee forwards, let the heel come up, and 3, return. Now, obviously, those 3 stages will overlap a little bit, but it's useful to think about them as being separate for a little bit. But now, bringing your arms into the movement. Don't overextend your arms. And especially now we're going to change to fisherman, not fisherman cast, I'm not talking about. Cow gazes at the moon, your arms are out a little bit and you let them swing up. They come down across your belly, and in the first instance, you're looking between your hands towards the front corner. If you imagine that you're in a square room, and here you're looking towards one corner, the upper corner, and here on the other side. And what you may find is, and it's by no means necessary, that after a little while, by settling down a bit more, you may turn a bit further. But be careful, because what you don't want to do, of course, is to twist right round and end up stumbling around. So cow gazes at the moon. It's one of those movements that we do where we really push at the boundaries of that softer movement. One more time. And then, so we're going to change stance. Before we do, just a word about the walking. It was the question about the ankle that made me think of this. Should have pointed it out before, really. One of the things that they concern themselves with in falls rehabilitation therapy, the programs people get put through if they do have trouble falling, is gait, walking method. And one of the things they emphasize is the heel-toe action. We've always done this in Tai Chi. When we do the step in, what we do is we push out, we put the heel down. You notice my knee is still a little bit bent. And then the toes go down, and then the weight moves. Going back, it would be the ball of the foot down, but just thinking about going forwards here. So notice that my toes are pointed up. I'm exaggerating slightly, because one of the things that they do try and train people to do is to raise their toes. Because otherwise, what we might do is go to take a step, but the toes stay behind, and that can be a trip hazard. So what we want to learn to do is here to raise the toes a little bit. I'm exaggerating slightly and go forwards. It's one of the things when we do that pumping movement in the chair, it will help with that. And it's one of the functions that we tend to lose as we get older if we're not careful. And if we're not careful, we can end up sort of shuffling around like that. It's not just how high we're lifting the foot, it's actually getting the toes clear of the ground. So you can practice it in a chair with that movement that we do before we stand up to get the ankle working. Standing, So this is where something to help is to hang on to, because you're really concentrating on one thing. You could just try doing this, raising the knee a little bit, push out, put the heel down, but leaving the toes up. And this is exaggerated. You don't need to do it this much in ordinary walking. And then lowering the toes and coming back, and even this way, put all the foot down and then the heel. So that's quite a useful little thing that becomes part of how we do the stepping. There are so many of these little exercises that you could spend half a day doing them, couldn't you? So you might want to try that a few times independently. But if as part of your sort of routine, exercise routine, you do the walking, then once you've practiced it a few times, you just build it into the walking. And again, it doesn't hurt to exaggerate it a little bit, because it's an important function. So have one foot forwards, transferring your weight. Giving those few moments for the punctuation, for the settling. And then raising toes and heel. Once again, as with the parallel stance, when we were doing hitting the ball or preparing for hitting the ball, you'll see that again, if I use this, it would be on the inside of the foot, but here I'm not quite getting to that sort of like full spot, especially going back. You can see I'm not quite there. I'd want to be more like that. But as soon as I start to raise toes and heel, there's a slight shift. So what we have to be careful of when we do that is that we don't do this and we do this. And that's why I emphasize sort of dropping the hip and pushing the knee forwards. And here it's like somebody's pushed down, has done that. Because if we're not careful, we start to do this little movement by doing this and that. And of course, because your weight's already moving forwards at that point, that can make it quite wobbly. But if we can find a way to raise heel and toes without disturbing the alignment of the body, which should be quite possible, of course, just needs a bit of thinking about, then we can really help our stability. And then stepping in. On the other side. Raising your toes and your heel. So then bring your foot in, forwards, and the heel goes down, lower your toes, transfer your weight. and going back the other direction. Here, but if you are stepping backwards, it's the ball of the foot, then the heel. Since we're running out of time at this point, just do the forward and backward and forward stepping again. Change direction. Okay, and then shake out. Go back to your chairs. Running out of time to do the other movements properly, so we'll leave them for now. But just thinking about this action with the feet. Of course, as you know, before we stand up, we're doing this exercise. From the side, you're doing this. You could also do this just to train that movement. You wouldn't get the same action in the muscles of the legs, but that's quite a good one to do. And then, of course, when we do step out, when we do the step in, again, we have the same thing. We push the heel up, we raise the toes, we go forwards and down. So there, heel comes up, toes come up, push the heel into the ground and down. And so that's quite a useful exercise for training good gait, G-A-I-T, not gait as in G-A-T-E. The gait, the walking method. There's a whole load of things involved in that. They're quite small movements. And as I said, they're often movements that as we get older, we lose functionality in them. So it's a useful exercise. This one that we do at the beginning, I think I may have forgotten to do it today, but normally we would do it at the beginning, just stepping out. It does actually train us to take good steps. And because it's slightly exaggerated, of course, you wouldn't do it like, wouldn't raise the toes so much or lift the legs so much walking down, but it just trains this flexion and extension of the foot, which is so important. It doesn't, it just stops you, catching the front of your foot on a curve or something like that. It's very easy for that to happen. So the ankles are obviously quite significant in that, and they don't always get a lot of attention, do they? They're right down at the end of the leg. We tend to forget about them. Okay, so back to the sitting position, hands down by your sides, embrace tiger, return to mountain. One more time. and rest. Lovely. As always, that went very quickly for me. I always run out of time when I start to talk about one thing in particular. So, but hopefully that was